You could aim your gun in the direction in which you wanted your billets to go, but your bullets very often didn't go to that place. Very, very, very scary.
Do you remember that fear, even now, if you think about it?
Oh, yeah, rather. Can't get rid of the feeling. It had happened to a bloke that I was in close association and friend with, and he's a goner. He paid the ultimate price.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Lights, Camera, Combat podcast, the podcast where we speak to incredible people with inspiring stories from a life in connection to combat. Over the course of this series, I'll be speaking to veterans turned TV presenters, incredible athletes, world record holders and World War II veterans as I sit down with people who share some unbelievable stories to help not only me, but hopefully you, find the light at the end of any tunnel. On today's episode, I sit down with World War II and Bomber Command veteran Gwynne Williams. Gwynne has some of the most heartbreaking and emotive stories I've ever heard, from his never-ending guilt of his role in the war to the never-ceasing feeling of fear that he still feels today. Gwynne has never sat down and opened up in this way about his wartime experiences before, from a child in the Blitz in London to 30 missions over Nazi-occupied Germany. This is an unbelievable conversation and Gwynne gets very emotional, and it is without doubt one of the most incredible stories I have ever heard. So, wherever you are, however you listen, sit back and enjoy this episode of Lights, Camera, Combat. So, I'm sat here now joined by the incredible 99-year-old Gwynne Williams, rear gunner of the old Lancaster Bomber from the Second World War, an incredible World War II veteran joining me here today. Gwynne, it's an absolute pleasure to be sat down talking to you today. How are you?
Fit as a flea.
Fit as a flea, that's exactly what we love to hear. So, New Year started well. We're sat here now in the New Year. How's your New Year and Christmas been?
Yeah, very, very promising. I've had a very happy time, and my family are very close. They look after me very well, and all my close friends are included always, so that I'm never left out of anything. And if I might say so, I'm rather included in too many things that I wish I hadn't any association with, but life is like that, isn't it? You like to be polite to people when they are being polite to you. No, I haven't missed out on anything, and I having, I think, been included in a lot of things that normally I wouldn't have been associated with. So I've no complaint.
Good. And as we are here now, we're a couple of months away from the big 100th birthday. Are you looking forward to that?
Oh yes, because it's for some reason or other that I do. I've never thought about it, but people seem to make a great deal of fuss about reaching the golden age, as they say, of 100 years. But I've never really thought about it. It just happened, and you can't do anything about it unless you want to commit suicide. Yeah, it happens, and you accept it, and the moment very quickly passes. So you can return to normal.
Yeah. Well, we are, for people listening to this that aren't watching it, we're sat in your living room recording this, and your lovely wife has put on an incredible spread of a lovely cup of coffee with some cheese scones and some cake. So we're well stocked up for chatting together. And what I'd like to start by doing is going back to your earliest memories that you can think of. So you grew up in London, which I think is very clear to hear from your very lovely, well-spoken voice. What do you have any recollections, memories of your childhood in those years in London?
No, I've never thought about it. I often think, occasionally I think about the days when I was a boy, growing up in North Kensington, where I was pretty happy and I had plenty of friends, and the group of friends along with me would be the first, I'm sure, to complain that we had no reason to regret growing up in North Kensington, where it was a very safe place, and we were always very well respected by other people who came from a different sort of background.
Did you enjoy growing up in London?
Oh yes, I did. It was very busy, but I found no difficulty with that at all.
So what was London like, sort of, 90 years ago now?
Yeah, well, I hope I'm correct in saying I shouldn't think it was any different at all, or very little different. People were always very polite to each other.
That might be a little bit different to nowadays.
Oh dear, really?
Well, the world changes, doesn't it?
Yes, it does move on, doesn't it?
But in those days, growing up, London was a good place to be.
Yes, it was a safe environment, as safe as one could get, and I was happy, very happy in it. My parents looked after me very well, and I got into no difficult scrapes, which would have been a big possibility, because there were all sorts of scrapes you could get into in those days. So
do you remember what your parents did for work?
I don't remember. I don't remember my dad. He was a singer, but what he did other than that, I don't know. Except he used to be broadcasted occasionally.
Wow.
But we didn't dwell on that. I mean, it was a way of earning a living. My mother worked for the local authority. I don't know how I could put it. She worked really as a pastry cook in a large establishment in which she provided all sorts of things for consumption.
Do you remember when, so you grew up in London, obviously the Second World War broke out in 1939. Do you remember the time of that, of war breaking out? Do you remember what that time was like?
Yes, I do. And there was a long gradual encroachment towards the real thing. You are now at war with Germany. Well, we thought we'd never get there, but it did. It did happen. We got there, but very few people could actually believe that we were at war with Germany, and we had not a blink of an idea what it involved. We didn't expect, for example, to have night after night of bombing from planes up a few thousand feet in the darkness, up a few thousand feet up, dropping loads of explosives on us. We couldn't have prophesied that kind of situation. And the Germans were our friends for a very, very long period before war actually started. And it was outrageous to think of them as anything else other than our very close friends.
Do you touch on there? Obviously, what you're talking about is obviously the Blitz, and
yes.
What was it like living through that?
Well, very strange is the quick answer. One got used to it very quickly. One had to. We people in London or Kensington, where I lived at the time, we used to wonder how other folk in another part of England were getting on, and if they were surviving as well as we were surviving. Of course.
Did you have any close calls? Was anywhere near or around you affected by the bombings?
Oh yes, the bombs used to be very accurate, and I think the closest I got is when the one landed directly opposite our house.
Wow.
And right in the sort of in the middle of the road, and that just sort of 10 yards away, so to speak.
Wow.
Although I wouldn't like to measure out the distance. Perhaps if I did, it would make me think even more of how lucky I was to get away with it. Just a few hours before, I might have been walking across that road, and lots of people were being killed, but it was so frequent that we didn't think about it very much.
There was no time to stop and reflect on it, because it was so constant.
No, we didn't reflect on it.
Were you spending your nights, down in air raid shelters and in protection?
Oh yes, we did that, and that was good fun sometimes, because although it wasn't living in the shelters as we were sometimes for weeks on end.
Wow.
It might seem very cruel and hazardous at the moment, but my afterthoughts on that era, on that time, are not at all worrying. I somehow expected to survive.
Do you think that comes with almost that young, childlike naivety in a way?
I think so, yes. Yes, we could hear the planes overhead. They came over just like clockwork. 6 o'clock, there'd be a humming noise in the distance, and then another one, and so on. It would go on, and I kept my fingers crossed. After all, the family were all involved, and if a bomb dropped nearby, we might be lucky and survive, or we might be injured.
Did you have any family or friends who were injured or affected?
Oh yes. And nobody, fortunately, nobody very, very close to the family. Some folk we were very friendly with up north. Went through the ultimate experience and suffered accordingly. So it was very real and not a bit funny.
No. So
although we made a lot of fun about it, and the newspapers, of course, made a lot of fun out of it, and that helped a lot for us to clear our minds out.
So obviously you sign up and you become involved with the RAF. Were these experiences going through the Blitz and other such events, were they things that made you want to join the war?
I didn't think about it in that way. It was just when you get to this age of, what was it, 15 or 16, you were ready to go into the forces. I don't know whether I'm being terribly accurate here now, because it was a long time ago, and it didn't seem so bad at all. I'll be doing what everybody else, all the other young lads are doing, joining my mates in the forces, where I'll have to do what the Sergeant Major tells me to do, and I hope that I can respond in the appropriate way. When he tells me to stand to attention, I hope I shall be able to stand to attention, sir. Sergeant, Son, as we say, call him, Sergeant.
Do you remember the process of when you signed up?
Yes, I did. I do remember going to, in another part of Kensington, to an office that looked very brisk and polished and all the rest of it. And I thought, what am I coming into here? Yes, I do remember that very clearly. And it did disturb me a lot at the time, although I had no actual evidence of it disturbing me later on.
So what made you go into the RAF and specifically into Bomber Command?
Ah, yes. Well, I'd been, as a youngster of 15 or 16 or 17, I'd always been involved in the ATC, which you may have heard of or not, but it doesn't matter anyway. The A was for Air, Air Force Corps, CORP.
Yeah.
And the Air Force had a particular following at the time, in a popular way, because they were the only ones who were seemingly at war at that time of peace. The Air Force was the only one having anything to do with warfare. So I'm sorry, I'm running out of ideas.
Don't be silly. We'll just keep moving on and talking about different things. So you decided that you'd been involved as a youngster and decided that you wanted to go into the Air Force.
Yes. I joined an organisation which is called the ATC, which is the Air Training Corps. It sounds very grown up now, but at the time it was a ground staff organisation that really did take you over and with all your good points and bad points, and get you to march and attend assemblies and attend to martial affairs. I don't remember much about it, quite honestly. It's a long time ago.
Long time now, yeah. And that was what got you down the path to getting involved with the Lancasters when your time came about.
Yes, exactly. Yes, which was strange, really, because we used to boast about being associated with the Lancaster. They were over Germany every night and day, and to be associated with that kind of activity made us very proud indeed. We were the follow-up boys who also were going to do that sort of job very soon when we came of age, because at the time we joined the Air Force cadets, and at around about the age of 18, until we were called up, which would be any time after that.
Yeah. What do you remember about the Lancaster itself as a plane?
Well, the cold. I became a Lancaster Rear Gunner.
Yeah.
Not through any choice of my own, but because I was small and they needed small fellas to sit in the confined space of a turret stuck out on the end of a Lancaster without complaints about the cold. We had flying suits which were electrically heated for us, but like everything else, there is a limit to what you can put up with or endure. The suits we had were a help in many, many ways to relieve the intense cold of being up, 30,000 feet. But not enough, really.
No.
So we all, I would say, we were all very, very pleased when the end of our tour, which we called our commitment for that particular day or evening.
Yeah.
was over and we could go home, get warm again.
And for people that might be listening or watching and don't know about sort of the makeup of a Lancaster, obviously the rear gunner, which was you, is essentially a small little bubble at the back of the plane,
yeah,
with the gun sticking out, where obviously you would have a great deal of exposure to that cold air, however high you are.
Yes, indeed. Yes, it was the cold which was the nasty part of the job. The intense cold. I'm surprised in a way now that it didn't kill some of us. It was so intense. But the stints of the jobs that we didn't last long. The Lancaster was a very fast bomber, and it could fly us over Germany in a matter of minutes. In a matter of minutes, we'd be over Germany and over across the sea if necessary.
Did you ever have to? Were you firing the gun often, or was there not a great deal of need for you to?
Oh yes, we had always to practice firing the guns. We usually had 3 guns, and we always had to practice firing them at given moments, just to keep the guns warm, so to speak, so that when they were really fired in anger, they operated properly.
Yeah. And that was, I presume, a response that you had to do because of, as we're talking about, the cold and the weather, in which you needed to make sure that those guns were staying warmed up.
Yes, that's right.
Was there ever a thought process of thinking where those bullets you might have been firing were ending up, or was it?
No. We always had to practice firing the guns, making sure the gun was warmed up, just in case it was needed for killing purposes. But where the bullets were going, as far as we were concerned, they were just disappearing into the air. And we'd never see them again, we'd never hear them again.
Yeah. So did you fly all of your missions over Germany? Was that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, apart from the preliminary training that we had, which lasted about 3 months.
Where would you go for that?
Over England. And it was, as you can imagine, with great feeling of insecurity that we went on our first mission over Germany. God, they're firing their guns at us, and we're firing our guns and dropping our bombs on them, and we can't blame them for firing at us.
No. Do you remember that first mission then, when you went over for the first time?
And little bits of it, but not the whole caboodle.
Are there any specific moments across the tours that you do sort of jump out to you, that you remember specific moments from missions?
I don't think so. It became almost a habit. Oh, you're on the job tonight, okay. 6 o'clock. you put your flying clothing on and stagger out to the plane and get aboard and have a bit of a joke with your fellow travellers. But in a few seconds we were over Germany and doing the job, killing people.
Did you think of it like that when you were doing it, or was it just the job?
Well, it did cross my mind from time to time. I thought, when I press this plunger, it's going to release a cascade of bombs, and there might well be some unfortunate people underneath it. Yes, I did think about it, but very quickly following up those sorts of thoughts would be, well, you've got to do this job, or you can't refuse to do it, otherwise you'll be on a fizzer. That means a charge for disobeying orders or something to that effect.
Yeah.
And then you're really in trouble.
Yeah. Do you ever then sort of remember feeling bad about it, or you have those thoughts and that there might have been people down there? Was it a guilt thing, or was it just obviously because you had experienced being in that position yourself, obviously at home at the Blitz before joining up?
Yes. I used to occasionally think, when I press this button, those poor sods down below are going to know I've arrived. But strangely enough, I didn't have any feeling of enmity towards the Germans. They just happened to be in my company at that particular time, and I hoped I wouldn't kill anybody, but or injure anybody severely.
Did it feel, obviously we talk about the plane and how it felt when you were building up to being in it as a youngster? Did it feel cool to be part of a Lancaster crew? Oh yes. We were very, very proud of that. We were in Lancasters. Yes, we were very proud of that. And how old were you when you first served on the flight? I should think we were. I was 18 years of age, and not very experienced at flying around in an aircraft. What was your relationship like with the other guys in your crew on board? Oh, very good indeed. Very chummy. Yes, we it's a bit silly to say we loved each other, but we were very conscious of a very close association with them, and I don't ever remember having arguments with any of the other members of the crew. No, we were there to do a job, and we had to do the job, or they would face a very serious and severe investigation board. And that was a cruel experience that I never wished to encounter. Yeah. So, you say there wasn't really any close calls for you in the air. You Oh, in the air? No. I don't recall any close encounters with the Germans in the air. Unscathed in comparison.
Yes, I went in unscathed and I came out unscathed. I was just a lucky guy. Lots of air gunners didn't do so well.
What did then or maybe now even? How do you feel towards the guys that were in your position that didn't make it back unscathed, and some that didn't make it back obviously at all compared to?
Oh yeah, yes, that was very worrying. And strangely enough, not from a personal point of view, but very worrying that it had happened to a bloke that I was in close association and a friend with, and he's a goner. He paid the ultimate price, and it was difficult to believe that the guy who used to be your mate and with whom you used to go out for a pot of ale, was shot down.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. If you are, please leave a like, a review, a follow or subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to. It helps us grow the podcast and bring you the best guests that we can. Without further ado, let's get back into this episode.
Did that make the feeling of pride in your role? Did those events almost bring it closer to home and actually sort of highlight the reality of what war actually was like?
Yes, it did. I never did get excited at the thought, oh look, you're fighting the Germans, they've got gunners aimed at you and you're firing back at them. I hope they're not good gunners. Well, fighting in the air was very weird, really, because you could aim your gun in the direction in which you wanted your billets to go, but your bullets very often didn't go to that place, because flying in the air and on an aircraft that was moving about in the wind, made it very unstable as a platform.
Do you remember the feeling when you'd done that last mission and you were done and you knew you didn't have to go up anymore?
Yes, I do, and usually we had a little bit of a booze up, as we used to call it, in the mess, or the blokes who had come to the end of their tour. The tour was the string of operations that you had to get through. After you finish your tour, you had a booze up, and we usually ended up by getting drunk and dancing in a great long line around the huts and keeping all the WAFs awake at night, which they didn't appreciate very much.
Was it a big feeling of relief at the time when you were done?
Oh, tremendous relief, yes. Tremendous relief.
So you say there, obviously, once you finished, and that was the tour done, everyone had their booze up. Oh, once you landed and you got back from a regular mission, what was what would that look like when you landed? Would it be, would you go and have a drink to sort of deal with what you'd just done, or was it sort of back and go straight to bed to be ready for the next day?
Oh no, we have a bit of a booze up.
Did that help? Did that help to sort of cope with?
Yes, it helped to give a shutdown on what you've been up to in the previous hours. Sometimes it seemed anyway, sometimes it seemed to be fun, but mostly it was pretty dangerous and very, very, very scary.
Do you remember that fear, even now, if you think about it?
Oh yeah, rather. Can't get rid of the feeling.
And that stayed with you for the 80 years since, knowing that feeling of fear.
Yes. I used to curl up in bed and think, oh well, that's over. Well, how long have I got to wait until next time? Next time would be probably a fortnight later. But anyway, it gave us a breathing space in between times.
Yeah.
And with that gave us a bit of courage as well to
go again.
Go again and get it.
So, obviously, in your position at the back of the plane, and you had this little bubble almost that you were looking out of, and you were obviously in the position therefore that you could look down and you could see everything that was going on below. Yeah. Are there any images that stayed with you of sort of any horrors or any bad things that you saw looking down?
Well, I was always frightened. Frightened to death would be even much more accurate to say, to describe. Shall I get back to base safely this time, like I did last week, or that sort of thing? And arriving back at base, the booze up has probably already started. You go into the sergeant's mess and there'd be beer all over the floor and beer all over the tops of the counters, and the booze ups began then.
Do you remember, were there instances where you ever saw other planes that you'd gone up with go down, or guys that you'd gone up with that didn't come back like you did?
Yes, that was a very serious thought, and one tried to dwell on it not at all, because it was very hurtful, and in some ways you thought, well, the Jerrys deserve what you're doing tonight.
I think it's so easy for people to forget that we have this conversation now, and you know we're talking as you're getting close to the grand old age of 100, but you're only 18 doing this. You know, you're just out of being a child.
Yes.
It's crazy to have to not just go through these things in the moment, but then also deal with what you've seen and the sounds and what you've experienced. And you talk about, you know, curling up in your bed. I think it's easy for people to forget if they hear and they see this now, and just because of the age that you are having this conversation now, that there was an 18-year-old boy in there at that time, and it's somebody who's just past the point of being a child. That's not...
Yes, yeah.
You know, that's difficult for anybody to go through those things, let alone someone who's no longer a boy.
Yes, it was difficult. You hadn't any choice in the matter. One day you were 19 years of age, and a couple of days later you were 20 and you were a man, and you've got to take a man's responsibilities on board.
Yeah. And
deal with them according to the rules of the game. Well, I call it a game. It was a horrid period, really.
You know, we spoke before we started recording about the way in which the world has changed, and on this podcast I talk to people from all different periods, all different experiences, and what their lives have been like since. Do you know, we were talking earlier about PTSD and, you know, post-traumatic stress and these sorts of instances that happen with soldiers. What did it feel like at that time for you, finishing that wasn't really at least a recognised thing at that time, people dealing with what they'd seen? What was the way that you and you know, other guys like you could deal with what you'd seen and what you'd done?
Yes. Oh, yeah. You had to have a pretty sharp forgettery, I think is the best way of dealing with that one. You had to... Well, the eyes come flooding into your head. The ideas come flooding into your head of what it was like getting back after being over Germany in a plane that's dropping bombs on civilians as well as army and navy.
Do those images ever still come into your mind today?
Oh yeah. Yes, I can't believe sometimes that I was involved in them. And I didn't ever want to face up to the fact that I was involved.
Why was that, do you think?
Because I'm a peaceful sort of chap, and I would hate hurting anybody deliberately in that way.
How do you feel being called a hero?
Being called
a hero?
Oh, that's a lot of rubbish. We weren't heroes. We didn't get up and walk into our situations blindly. We knew what we were doing. We didn't really volunteer. We sort of slid into position, ready to take on board the responsibility that someone else may have died occupying, or couldn't finish for some reason or other. No, it's a strange feeling.
But you know, there was that it could have easily been in so many instances you know, where it could have been you being less fortunate than other people, and people like you were in that position and didn't make it home, and you were, as much as you are here now talking to me, with a change of fate that obviously could have been you, and you were only 18, put into a position that, as you say, as a peaceful person your whole life, you would not have wanted to be in that position had you had the choice.
Yeah.
You know, it was whether you recognise it as heroism or not, you were, as a boy, essentially forced to do something that you didn't want to do, and you knew, as you say, the consequences of what would have happened if you didn't do it, and you still did it, and you were able to do what was expected of you to ultimately protect the country, protect your family, that, you know, you had been there with them while they were on the brunt end of the force that you had been a part of as a child, and you being able to muster up the courage to do what you did. I think whether or not you refer to it that way is 100% the work of a hero, the way that you and everybody else behaved.
Yes. Oh, we didn't really think about it.
No.
If we got back safely, that was just our luck.
Mm.
It was a sort of luck game.
Mm.
You were lucky. You were unlucky if you didn't go out and take part. You were lucky if you did.
Mm.
And if you got back safely.
If you could give a message to your comrades, the guys that you fought with, and those that didn't make it back, what would your message be to those people?
I think don't join up. Don't ever join up. Let someone else do the dirty work. Dropping bombs on innocent people, or even people who deserve to have bombs dropped on them.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that anybody wants to be in that situation.
When you look back now, obviously we sit here 80 years on, are you proud of what you did and your job?
No, I tell you the truth, I keep quiet about it. I keep very quiet about it. And I try to avoid any drift of conversation into talking about the tail end of things.
Why is that?
Because there's a shame to be endured forevermore if you stop and think about it. Dropping pieces of machinery that are going to explode and kill and maim and hurt other people is not pleasant.
And do you feel that sense of shame now when we're talking about it?
Oh yes. Oh yes.
I want you to know that you shouldn't feel that way, because, and I completely understand why you do, because of your moral compass and the person that you are, but you had a job and you did what you had to do, and you know they would have got you if they could have got you.
Yes.
You know, and it was, nobody wanted to be in a position like that, and you had to do it, and ultimately the truth of the matter is that I and everybody else that is here now is able to exist in the life that we live now because of what you did.
Yes, that's a very, very fine explanation. if we can absorb it in the way it's been explained, then so much the better. It was not a happy time.
Does it make you emotional to talk about it now?
Not really emotional in the sense. It certainly makes me feel guilty without the emotion.
You should try and feel pride about what you did, though, because, as I say, it has led everyone to be able to live the life that they live now.
Yes, that's true.
Because of what you did, you know, and because of the willingness that you put yourself in a position to give up your life for your country if that was what it came to.
Yes, I try to think about it in that way.
You should, because that is the truth, and it's difficult to hear you talk like that because everybody now views you, rightly so, as a hero and doesn't pin any blame on what you did, because it is the reason that this country was able to triumph the way that it was, the way that to create a life for everybody now that we live at the moment.
Yes, certainly true.
How do you then, you know, we'll bring it to now, before we round up. It's been 80 years. Would you ever have expected to get to this point, nearly 100, and have people and their interests come back round to this point in your life?
No, I certainly didn't ever really think that I'd ever reach my present age. I didn't think I was going to be that lucky.
Is it nice to be able to have these conversations with people that do want to continue to recognise the work that you did?
Oh, yes, in a way. Although a lot of people immediately assume that you're enjoying what you're saying and you're wanting to show off or something, as if you could show off about a thing like that, about being organised to kill lots of other people with a bomb.
You know, I can tell just from the conversations that we've had today that obviously talking about it does bother you in a way that it makes you feel bad about what you did, and almost like you shouldn't be talking about it in the way that we are.
Yes,
but
yeah.
You know, hopefully you can go away from this and you can think that actually the reason I'm here, the reason I'm talking to you, is not to glorify inflicting harm on anyone, but it is to actually, you know what, recognise that what you did at such a young age was such an incredible feat and an incredible ask of people of such a young age, and what you're doing in you yourself talking to me is also giving a voice to all those guys that weren't able to make it back and have these conversations and say, do you know what, the work that you all did, however difficult it was at the time, has meant that this country has been able to be, you know, free for the last 80 years.
Yes.
And I would love you to take that away, if nothing else, from our conversation and just...
Well, it's very kind of you to put it that way. I'm certainly not proud of the things I did, even though they had a national twist on them.
Yeah.
Someone had to do the job, which was difficult enough.
Yeah.
And it just happened to be me and a few of my mates,
Yeah.
my close friends, who took this, the awful sting that came from dropping bombs on humankind.
Yeah. Well, you know, as we get close to the big birthday coming up, I want you to remember the impact that you've had on many lives, and the many lives that you've made better in the process of doing what you've done. And I want you to really think about that, and I want you to know that it has been an incredible pleasure for me to come and have this conversation with you today. We, obviously, people that won't know, we've been very fortunate enough to spend some time together. I've been very fortunate to spend some time with you on a couple of other occasions in the course of the last year, and it's been great to see you, you know, out engaging with other people, with activities to shine a light on the great work and service that you did, and as I say, the hero that you rightly are, whether you will agree to that or not. And as we move into this big exciting year for you, I look forward to you know, continuing to show what an incredible man you are, and it's been a real pleasure and a privilege, Gwynne, for me to sit down and talk to you this afternoon.
Well, that's very kind of you to say so. I don't always feel that I've been privileged to represent other lads of my generation, to do the sort of work I undertook from time to time. In fact, I often suffer great shame at the thought of what I was doing to injure lots and lots of people.
I think you have to, you know, now recognise, and every single person that listens to this or watches this will absolutely not judge you in a way of shame or guilt or anything other than praise for the things that you had to do, and I want that to be the message that you are able to leave this afternoon with.
Oh, yeah, very, very kind to put it that way.
I mean it, and as I say, it has been a pleasure to spend this afternoon with you. It's been a real privilege, and I will shake your hand, if I may, sir, because it has been a great afternoon. Thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure to spend time with you.
Well,
thank you very much.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you. And happy 100th birthday in a couple of months.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Yes, I hope you'll reach your 100th birthday one day.
Thank you. Me too. Thank you. Take care.
It's a good place to be in. Yes, thank you.